Welcome to biology. We are going to start this first activity with ecology, as I've mentioned. And so this is going to be an ecology introduction. And really, the goal of this activity is going to be to kind of learn how to talk about ecology and learn how to describe it and some of the basic factors that we look for when we're studying ecology. So, to get started, we want to kind of discover what is ecology, and I thought the best way would be to watch this video. So, the directions, there's going to be 3 steps really. Watch the video, Introduction to Ecology, before starting the assignment. Then I want you to take notes on the fundamental concepts of a biome, habitat, niche, and energy acquisition. And then once you do that, you should be able to answer all the questions related to the notes to really check for your understanding of what you've just read. So, and I'll go more into this. I'm not going to watch the video in this video, but please watch it. It's only 4 minutes long. It gives good examples and good visuals along with some of the definitions that you're going to receive down for your notes. So then looking at the notes, I really want you and encourage you to take notes. And one of the biggest reasons for this is as you start preparing for college, okay, most of you are juniors, and so it's right there. And you really want to make sure you have the right study habits to be successful after high school. And even if you're not looking for a 4-year degree, a 2-year degree will also require note taking and studying. And on top of that, even if you're not thinking about school, if you're thinking about going straight into a career, most careers will require you to learn how to do the job specifically. And so it's really important that you have a way of doing that on your own, because that's what's going to be expected of you after high school. So notes are really important. That being said, I can't require it, but here's the information I'm going to be expecting you to be able to refer back to in future assignments. So first, we have what are called ecological levels of organization. And really, it's kind of like a hierarchy of a really broad kind of spectrum to more specific. And so it starts down here at the bottom. We have the biosphere, and this really is planet Earth. It is an enclosed region, so to speak. We're not just introducing new species from other planets. So this is the broadest region that we have is planet Earth. And then you have what are biomes, and we're going to look at biomes down here a little bit more. But it's still a very large region, but it's going to be defined based on really physical characteristics, as well as some of the animals that tend to be in those environments. Then a little bit smaller, you're going to look at an ecosystem. And so an ecosystem is really a more interconnected part of each biome. And then community. With community, you're really looking at, again, even smaller, but the interactions between the living organisms, not necessarily some of the non-living factors. And we'll come back to that in a moment. Then a population would be one species. So, you have hundreds, if not thousands of species within an ecosystem or a community. But now, okay, we're just focused on one population, one species, and how they interact with one another. And then, of course, the last one here is an individual. You can always look at what are the habits of each individual within that population, or different individuals based on, and that could be based on, the gender of the species, or the individual, I should say, the age of the species. They will tend to have different habits, and you can study that within, a population. So that's the overall organization of how these kind of layers come together to create our biosphere. But we really want to focus on biomes. And so the definition of a biome is right here. It's a large, naturally occurring community of flora and fauna occupying a major habitat, such as forest or tundra. And then I have a list of biomes here that are common. And there's more, and there's like subcategories of these biomes, but these really are some big ones that we should be aware of. So I'll go to zoom in. And again, I would encourage that you put this in your notes. Now, you might see some of this stuff is seems like a lot, but you could simplify it really if you wanted to based on the physical description. These little descriptions include physical characteristics as well as a list of species that tend to be in those biomes. So maybe you've heard of some of these before. We have a tundra, taiga, a temperate rainforest, tropical rainforest, grassland, desert, and oceans. And there's going to be different oceans as well, right? But the oceans in general we can kind of clump together. So again, each of them have slightly different characteristics, and they're very defining, right? You know when you're in a rainforest versus a desert, and so the species that live there are going to be different because there's different physical characteristics of that habitat, and therefore they need different characteristics in order to survive. So hopefully you've heard the term survival of the fittest a little bit, and that always is going to be a factor when we're talking about species like this. Also, I included hyperlinks to the definitions of flora and fauna. Flora is going to be what kind of plant life is in a biome, and fauna is going to be what kind of animals or mammals and so forth are going to be there, non-plants. Okay, then to kind of separate a biome versus habitat. Habitat is really kind of a broader, um, it's kind of like a broader term in a sense, but when we use the term habitat, we're really kind of focusing on parts of a biome. And so, and it's really going to be per like a species, because a species doesn't necessarily, live in the entire biome. So, habitat is simply a place where an organism lives. Okay, so you kind of can use them interchangeably, but technically there's going to be a little different. Again, a habitat will be a little more specific to the organism, and so then it usually doesn't include the entire biome. But then within a habitat, okay, when we're looking at what does a species need to survive, what do they interact with on a daily basis, there's going to be two types of factors, really. There's going to be what's called biotic factors, and that's the living things within the habitat that they're going to be interacting with. And then there's going to be abiotic factors and non-living parts. So that might be, well, I don't want to give any examples, so because you're going to do that down below. Then you have a niche, and the niche is going to be separate, okay, from the habitat and the biome, and because it's really the role of that organism. So if you're trying to define the niche for humans, honestly, it might be like a career. Okay, and this is, with humans it can get quite complicated, but also with other species. But just a very kind of elementary example, we have let's say mechanics. Okay, they're very specialized in fixing cars or fixing machines, and then you have a lot of the population that has no idea how a machine or a car works. So the role of a mechanic is very important, and it also gives them the ability to provide for the family and survive. So in a way, that you could call that a niche. Okay, and so with Animals, they're not going to necessarily have a career that where they're making money and so forth, but they're going to have very specific roles that allow them to survive within their community. So, uh, moving on from that, question one, this is going to be click and drag. So look at the list below, drag each item to the appropriate category. So you want to think, is this something that is living or is this something that's non-living? And these are all factors. So real quick, okay, just to show you, I can click and drag to this little box. Boom. I know animals are living, so I put that under biotic. Let's see, something that's non-living. Well, presence of water, that's not really living, but it's water. So there you go. So I have two examples. You just click and drag. If you make a mistake, you can unclick it. Question two. Now I want you to research two different organisms and describe their niche. So you can just go to Google, okay? Type in really any animal organism that you want, and you can even probably research what their niche is, right? Or you can think about it on your own based on what you already know. And the goal would be that you add a picture of the organism and a little bullet point list. So something to keep in mind, you can use this button here to add an image. If I was smart, I would have had an image ready, but upload picture, this might be something that you downloaded before. I'm just going to use the random picture from up above. This was from the biomes or the organization tiers. So if I open this, you definitely have to click add image again, but then you see that it goes there, and then I can go bullet point, bullet point, right? So you're kind of you know listing out what is their role, what kind of shelter do they use? Do they have what kind of habitats do they stay in, and is there predation, right? Do they have to? Uh, are they the food source for another animal and so forth? Then, if you hit enter, you should be able to then add another image below. So that's how you'll do your two organisms. You cannot do them side by side. Okay, so let me know if you have questions about that. Then, kind of checking for understanding, you might need to go back to the chart, relook at the chart up above. But what kind of biome do we live in here in Beaverton, Oregon? Now I have some more notes continued. It's slightly different category, but it's definitely connected to the ecosystem and the biomes that we're talking about, but really it's going to be about the types of organisms. And so looking at this energy acquisition, and I would recommend that you complete the notes. And I tried to format it like notes for you. So if this helps you to copy it exactly, I would recommend that. If you want to do it in a list form or whatever, it's completely up to you. But a key characteristic of an organism and an ecosystem is how they acquire energy. Without energy, you don't live. You can't live, right? If you think about ourselves, and for me with biology, I always like to think about people first. It helps me connect with it. So that's why I tend to use that example a lot, because we are animals and we do live in the world, in the biosphere. So thinking about that, we need energy. If we don't drink water and if we don't eat food, we're not going to live. And so it's very important that that is actually true for all organisms that are living. They need some type of energy source. So most living things will fall into one of these two categories. There are autotrophs and there are heterotrophs. And autotrophs, I kind of put in, what this means. It's really self energy, and so you might think of it. They can create their own energy, but they do need some help with that. So we also call them producers. They produce their own energy. So uh, producers, commonly the most common one you'll see in the entire world, is they will harvest energy from the sun. We call that photosynthesis, right? So this is going to be things like plants. plankton. They conduct photosynthesis from solar energy, and they create sugars that they can then use to grow and sustain their life. And there are other types of environmental sources. Some organisms will use things like nitrogen specifically, or hydrogen, and it's really a series of chemical reactions in very specific environments. But really, the most common is going to be harvesting energy from the sun. So this is very important. Okay, and autotrophs, and really, I would, to simplify it, maybe think plants. Okay, autotrophs are going to be your plants. Uh, then there's heterotrophs, which means they need something else. They need an other source to create their energy. And so we call them consumers, and we are one of them. We are a consumer. We have to consume our food in order to survive. So then within the consumers, there's there's quite a few different ways where you can gain that energy. And so you will see herbivores that will only eat plants. You'll see carnivores that only eat meat. Omnivores will pretty much eat anything. Excuse me. That being said, for like humans, for example, we are omnivores for the most part. By choice we may not be, but biologically and physiologically speaking, we can eat plants and not get sick. We can eat meat and not get sick. But we don't want to eat things that are dead, right? Unless it's cooked. And that's kind of an evolutionary development, to be honest. So it's kind of interesting to think that, yeah, we probably could, but chances are we're going to get sick. And oftentimes it's not a good sickness, okay? Because then there's decomposers, or these detrivores, and they break down dead stuff, right? When you see something, on the side of the road and it's starting to rot away, well, that's because it's being consumed by decomposers. And really, this is going to be like bacteria. Okay. Moss will grow on trees and stuff like that, wood, and it'll slowly break it down and consume it over time. So detrivores will break down dead stuff. Omnivores will eat just about anything. Meat and plants only can be separated as well. And those are your four main categories for consumers. Okay, so now answering a few questions about this. Why do you think autotrophs are commonly referred to as producers? If you were listening, hopefully that should be a pretty straightforward, short answer. 5, why do you think energy acquisition is a key characteristic of any organism? I also already mentioned this, but it wasn't specifically stated in the notes. Okay, so I want you to think about that. 6, hypothesize which form of energy acquisition would give an organism a higher likelihood of survival than the others. And really, I want you to think about, would it be easier to survive as an autotroph or a heterotroph? And with the hypothesis, there should be an explanation based on what you've learned. So, little sentence frame if you need it. I hypothesize that blank or blank would be more likely to survive because. And hopefully by now we're familiar with that kind of format for a hypothesis, but I still thought I'd put it there. And so again, hopefully we can do that. And as long as you have a good argument, okay, I will give you credit for that. Now, last but not least, I want us to read, and it's just going to be this first page of this reef corals, autotrophs or heterotrophs. And this is a scientific publication by what would be pronounced, I think, Garreau et al. And answer the following questions. And just to be clear on what, if you've never heard of the et al, what that stands for is "and others." And I'm pretty sure it's Latin or something like that, okay? But when you have a list, when you have a publication that has a list of multiple contributors, You always go with the person that's listed first, and when they're publishing this, they will list the person who is kind of in charge first. So they kind of get the credit, and it's usually by last name. So if you're wondering what that means, I got it from right here. We have Thomas F. And I think it's Garreau, and Nora I. Garreau, and C.M. Young. So looking at that, those are the authors of this study. Then again, I want you to read this first page. And here's the goal. One, I don't expect you to understand every single word out of it, but by reading scientific literature and being exposed to that vocabulary and being exposed to how they talk about things, will really help deepen your understanding, especially as we practice this. And again, when I'm thinking about my own experiences in college and what was expected of me, we read these all the time. And this is one page from like a 10-page publication, or it might have even been 12 pages. I included the link down here. And, in college, we'd have to read the whole thing. And then you got to pull out, what is this? What is their argument? What is their data? How did they support it? That kind of stuff. And that was probably one of the most difficult things I remember from my college level science classes. And so I really want to, as we go through these, not just tell you here's some of the notes that we're taking in high school science, but I really want to introduce you to what does the real science out in the world look like. And you'll notice this is a little dated, okay, but the research and the way they describe the research and the way they describe the relationships is very important. And so, again, I want you to be able to pull out some key information and answer questions, even if you don't understand every single word that they're saying. Okay, because most people don't, and honestly, it took me a little bit to remember. Okay, what is that? What is that? So. But that's part of the learning experience. So, question 7, what 2 universities were responsible for this research publication? You'll find that at the top. So you just kind of list those out. Question 8, based on this first page alone, and again, I know it's the first page, but the first page, the introduction really is supposed to tell you what is the question they're asking and what did they really conclude. And that might seem odd, but basically they don't want you to have to go through the entire thing to figure out what they discovered. So they will do their best to tell you what did they discover within their introduction, and then they support it with their data and how they collected their data, and then again their analysis of that data. So this is a pretty good summary of what they discovered. And then I would like you to try and include evidence from the text. Okay, so if there is a quote that you might be able to copy and put in there that supports why you answered what you did. And the real question is, are reef corals autotrophs or heterotrophs? What did they conclude? And question 9, why do you think Garreau et al. Would find it important to research this question about reef corals? So why is it important to know if reef corals are autotrophs or heterotrophs? Just want you to kind of hypothesize, think about it. You're welcome to research it. Why would that be important? And that's it. If you are interested in looking at it more, you can pull open the PDF here. But then to submit, once you're done, you can hit submit. You should be able to come back to this if you don't submit. Well, actually, even if you do submit. And again, I will try and give you feedback. So if you have a green dot, that means you got it correct. If you have a red dot, that means you got it wrong. I think there's orange if you get partial credit. And if it's not marked, I believe it stays blue. And that means I have not graded it. And so some of the short answers will take me a little longer to grade. But my goal is to give you feedback almost instantly. And that is how we'll kind of learn as we go. All right. Thank you for watching this and good luck with your ecology introduction.